Happy birthday, Heavenly Queen. This church is yours and this feast is yours, the church of the Nativity of our Blessed Lady. Therefore, the titular feast has precedence over the Sunday. We have this Gospel which places us in history, this succession which is traced to Joseph. Therefore, the rites of succession are there. The Lord is born in our geography and in a culture upon earth. And by this very fact, the family is sanctified and consecrated. The Lord wants to protect this fundamental nucleus of society, the domestic church. My friends, we have all this in common, whether in a monastic life or in a married life, that we have to safeguard the quality of that aquarium in which we navigate. It can be done, but alas, it can be undone. And we create the atmosphere in which we are bathed, for better or for worse. And no one here is exempt from this. It's fundamental to our day. Do we want a good atmosphere or a bad one? Sharp edges hurt. And those sharp edges are everywhere around now, and they have access to our soul by many means which are fairly new on the timeline of creation. Unpleasant texts, violent, aggressive messages on internet, all stuff which actually is heard on high and is writ on our copybook, which one day we will open with surprise. Remember that program years ago, This Is Your Life, Eamon Andrews? With regard to this, there is one specific element which I'd like to look at because it's integral and fundamental to the wider problem. It's communication. We all have to handle communication, but few on earth seem to master it. In the visions of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, it was picked up that the Holy Family was quiet. She didn't see loud laughter, she saw smiling. She didn't hear loud voices, but she saw communication, because words weren't all that necessary. They understood each other. It's interesting, actually, that higher animals have something of that. Dogs pick up moods, do they not? Because they don't talk, they have to take it all in. I remember those years on the continent, because there was no talking, all the dynamic was towards going in, towards recevoir, 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 to receive, to receive, to receive. One picked everything up and one emitted nothing. The average communication doesn't do that. It goes something like this. And there's no one who can get in there because it's all and one can't get through because there's emission happening all the time, rather like an exhaust pipe. Moreover, there are ways and means of not conducting a discussion. Even in monastic chapters, things are actually gloriously dysfunctional quite often, because people have an opinion which is the only one. I remember actually admiring one performance in chapter one day when there was a slight difference of opinion. One of the brethren got up calmly and administered an almighty wallop to the person next to him and sat down as though nothing had happened. I thought to myself, nice left clip there. A few minutes later we were in church and there was in as though nothing had happened. And yet, had there been progress in communication? It's more serious when in a family that becomes the habitual mode. When after a while a young couple starts to admit sharp edges, unpleasant words, words meant to hurt. After an intense time of courtship, those first moments are dramatically painful. And a lot can actually depend on how they're handled. Because nowadays, sometimes that's the beginning already of the end. Bad fumes. They then turn off from each other and have resort to distraction, which is easy to find now on screens. The quality has gone. This is the day on which one thinks of the place also where our Blessed Lady lived. It has come out in exorcism that the Holy House of Loreto has more to it than meets the eye. Joachim and Anna had been there. There was a curious case of possession which exploded in that house in fairly recent times, and the devil was asked to keep quiet because he was disturbing all that was going on in the basilica. And the exorcist obliged him to calm down and to talk in an intelligible way. And he did. And a conversation of kinds followed. Was it the true place? And he insulted those asking him, indicating, just have a look at the foundations where it's come from in the Holy Land. It all fits perfectly. But then he went on. My brother, Gabriel, was here. He has, therefore, a hatred and an envy and a jealousy for his brother archangels. It turned out that he was on the same level, Seraphim, actually the greatest, the most beautiful, the most glorious of creatures up till then, which of course led to his downfall, and which can lead also to our downfall. Because quite often, when it comes to discussion, pride is the fundamental problem, of which the rest is but the outworking and the symptom. A person who has been to a glorious university knows an awful lot, does he not? But it's difficult to get through to that person. He's used to being right, to being superior. He went on. The demon had tried and tried over history to destroy that holy place, that holy house. He had to say that its walls were far more sacred than those of the Vatican. Every stone was full of grace, and therefore he hated it. And he explained how he had tried to destroy it in wave after wave of destruction. He'd used the Roman Empire, he'd used other religions that he referred to as his servants, and he had failed each time because he was up against a greater power. Then he tried to get people to make fun of it, the intellectuals, precisely the proud, And he was using the proud of the church to show that it was nonsense. That he's doing on several levels. It's unpopular to say certain things. We are above certain things. We are above actually the very simple things that heaven itself wants. He was obliged to admit this interesting admission with regard to specifically the Holy Rosary. He didn't have permission to enter the house and family where the Holy Rosary was said. Moreover, every Hail Mary was a thump on his head. Questioned even more, the Litany of Loreto, the one that we still have, the classic litany of Our Blessed Lady. He had to admit between his teeth that he was trying to get people to say that it was nonsense, but that every title hurt him, for it exalted her, and he hates her because she has taken his place as the most glorious of creatures. And so, when we see that Our Lady calls herself Our Lady of the Rosary at Fatima, eventually, and asks one thing each time, in each of the apparitions, when we have a spiritual life which is superior, we can't handle these simple performances of repetition, then we are playing the devil's game. Lucifer, I will not serve. Pride. And what letter is in the middle of pride? I. In student days, I remember that one could have easy access to St. John Paul II by a simple trick. Go to the Sala Nervi on the first Saturday of the month, and he'd be there with the Holy Rosary. He said every day with great devotion the Holy Rosary. And you know what happened? Our Lady intervened precisely on the 13th of May. Do you know also that she intervened in fairly recent history on the 13th of May? This was picked up by satellite. That same St. John Paul II, on the 25th of March, the Annunciation, 1984, made with the bishops of the world and the abbots, of which our own was one, this consecration to the Immaculate Heart, asking her to intervene and protect. And you may recall that the mid-80s were a very tense time of history. These nuclear missiles pointing towards Europe and all the rest of it. It was picked up also by the CIA that this had been going on amongst the communists among themselves. Détente, remember under Carter, détente was a ploy which would enable the communist bloc to obtain the greater part of their objectives in Western Europe. I make a jump. Suddenly, on the 15th of May, 6 weeks later, something quite inexplicable happened. It had been picked up by American intelligence satellites that there was a huge movement of nuclear weapons, missiles, going towards a point in the north of that bloc, toward Gdansk, which would enable Russia to break the umbrella of protection of the states, so as to do something big. Europe was not prepared because of détente. It was the moment to strike, and they meant business. Our Lady intervened. Suddenly, with no reason or explanation, all that huge convoy of nuclear arms suddenly went wrong. Humanly, there was no explanation, but suddenly Russia changed its tone and really went into proper détente, and the rest is history. Gorbachev, God bless him, brought in the de-escalation of things, and eventually Our Lady intervened towards the end of the 90s with an unbloody revolution, taking away the communist regime as we knew it. Do you know also that she appeared in the Ukraine? She appeared over a forcibly disused Catholic church of Eastern Rite, wanting the rosary be much said. It was about to be changed into a museum of communism, I presume, but she appeared and said several things, one of which was this: the Ukraine one day will be instrumental in the conversion of Russia. My friends, we are in historic, I would say, cosmic times. Our generation may see a huge evolution of history which no one else has ever seen. It can go either way. But Our Lady is looking on, and we must claim what she asked. In the end, my Immaculate Heart.